So with great power comes great responsibility. Does anybody know where this quote is from? It's actually Batman, right? So, but this, I think, applies to AI as well. And we heard to talk about, well, what AI, the AI trends are doing to the market in the Forrester presentation. We talked about the AI Act, which I think is a very important cornerstone for generating trust. So today, I would like to take a very practical perspective and put some things we heard already into a context from the example of a bank. And, well, let's just put ourselves into the shoes of this fictional bank. It's Casablanca. Actually, I asked GenAI to come up with a great name for a bank and a logo. But this bank wants really to increase the activity of their digital customers. And they want to increase the customer engagement. They want to come up with great recommendations to their customers to, well, really shape the customer experience of the future. Many companies are looking into that. So that's, by the way, called hyper-personalization. And let me give you just one example for that. So hyper-personalization could mean that this guy here who just built a new house, he wants to move into this house, and he gets a message from his bank saying, in a very formal tone, you could get a customer credit for an interest rate of 3% here, so that you can not just move into your house, but you will see there are just things that you need to do. You can finance them with that approach. This guy likes to be addressed in a formal way. He gets this formal message. And I would like to introduce you to Rebecca. Rebecca is the gray-haired lady here on the left-hand side. Her daughter is about to marry. And to make this event a once-in-a-lifetime event, she gets another offer from the bank saying that, in a very emotional tone, you can get a credit for, say, 4% interest rate to do that. Okay, that's hyper-personalization. That may really apply to the needs of these guys here. But if I were responsible in the bank for what's happening outside in my customer channel, I would ask myself, oh, gosh, are we really offering the right product to the right people? Are we having an appropriate price point here? And by the way, we are addressing people maybe informally. Is that language adequate? Is that appropriate for the given purpose here? And I may have financial risks because if the offers are bad, if the price point is bad, and I automate these processes, then this will automatically burn money. So that's another problem. But we also talked about the AI Act. We talked about responsibility here. Is there any algorithmic discrimination? So for example, 4% and 3% interest rate, is it maybe based on gender? I don't know. I need to make sure that all this is understood and controlled. So implicitly, we already talked about a lot of reasons why AI governance is so important, right? And there are many reasons to build trustworthy AI systems. And by the way, what do I mean when I talk about trustworthy AI? I mean AI which is legally compliant to what we just heard, which is ethical. So you want to do that, that's a good thing to do. And it's robust, meaning that it also works in edge cases. Cases which are outside maybe the edge cases of the normal distribution, if you will, okay? So we talked about reputational risks. This is maybe one of the most important points. Recall that a credit card provider a few years ago who issued a 20 times higher credit limits to male people than to female people, and that got a huge uptake in the social media. You don't want to have that, of course, right? So financial risks. So you want to make sure that your automatic decisions are really good and that it generates money instead of burning money. And if you have bad AI systems, your staff, your employees will lose the trust into these systems, and this is really killing every business case. So there are many reasons for that. We talked about the AI Act. In fact, there are other legislations around the world, like there is the Colorado AI Act, there is the White House executive order in the US. I just learned about a legal endeavor in California. So this is shaping around. So the legal framework is different in each and every case. But what you need to do is kind of similar, because in the end, the question is, how can I make sure that my AI is non-discriminating, that I do best as I can data governance? So there is a good literature for you maybe to look into. And this is the guideline of the European Union High-Level Expert Group. And this expert group sat together before the AI Act was actually launched and talked about, okay, what do you need to do? What is it that I can do so that my AI is trustworthy? And they say that, yeah, you need to make sure that there is human agency and oversight. So natural persons, people, actually business people, not just technical people. Business people understand what's happening inside the systems, and they can explain what's happening inside. Privacy, data governance, of course, that's what we heard before, right? We need to establish data governance best practices here, and they are extended to AI. Transparency, what is the system doing? Can I communicate what's happening inside the system to, well, maybe you, if you got an offer, right? So you are interested as a customer, hey, what's happening here? I feel discriminated. I should better have an answer. And the answer can't be, well, I don't know, it's the algorithm, right? That's not a good answer. So transparency is important. Technical robustness, non-discrimination. And of course, you need to have some kind of audit trail to present to all the interested parties, whether it's the regulator or whether it's an internal party. All that needs to be done. So these are best practices. And by the way, these apply if you build high-risk applications, but you want to have these measures in place for every AI application, because in the end, you as the decision maker, the board of the company, you want to make sure that your AI is doing great and is healthy and not really burning money. So this applies to every AI you would like to establish. It's not just for legal purposes, but for the many other purposes as well. Okay, but how do we do that? And what does it mean? So from a development or technical point of view, we heard already about agility, and that was in the first opening talk here. When you build AI systems, it's not that easy. Typically, many different people work together. And if you think about hyper-personalization, then of course, this is not just one AI algorithm doing the magic. It's not GenAI, which you just feed with information and it comes back with the right product. You need to have a lot of different AI models which maybe come up with a good price, which come up with a good product you may be interested in, with a good next best action. So should I really give you the product offer right away, or do you need more information in the sales funnel before you are likely to convert the sales here? All this needs to be thought through. So in fact, you're working with a lot of different AI models. You're working with many data sources. You build those AI models, and then you put together all these things to a complex application, which maybe assesses the next best activity for a good price, generates a prompt, and all that is put together. So you have, well, generating models, you have working with data, you have building AI applications, and then running and monitoring these. So this is an everlasting life cycle, of course, and you want to improve the application as you go. Think about these 7 pillars of trust. You need to implement them in this process. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're still very speedy in this process, because you need to adapt your AI systems to the needs of the market and to the strategic needs of your company. And at the same time, you want to make sure that all the governance guardrails are in place. And by the way, who's responsible for that? So when I talk to clients in the early stages of AI, they quite often say that, yeah, we have a data science team, and these guys are caring for that. That's a huge mistake, and that's a huge trap, because actually you have the data science teams, you have data architects, data engineers, you have application developers, and you have business people. Business people are responsible to define what they want to do with AI, what kind of processes they want to automate with AI. So that's a very important point. You need to take care of each and every one here and help them understand what's happening in the system and what they can do to have guardrails, right? So this leads, I think, to 4 areas we should talk about, and giving these areas some kind of enterprise-wide attention. One is, of course, having a minimal viable governance of your data in place. What is it you need to do when you want to publish an AI application? The AI regulation, the AI Act, is telling you that you have to do a risk assessment in the beginning, but this is just the first part. You might want to ask yourself, okay, what are the controls, measures, checks, and balances I want to have in place whenever I apply or publish an AI application, right? This needs to be done in the governance part. explainability, fairness checks. You may want to check whether your data is biased to some degree. And by the way, every data source is biased because human people make decisions. These decisions are encoded in data. You have biases all over the place for many reasons, but you need to understand them. You need to work with that. You need to cope with that. So what are the fairness checks I need to do? What is the explainability? I can't delegate that to each and every data science group in the company, the ones who works in, well, marketing or in sales, or the ones who work in risk management. You need to have a company-wide, enterprise-wide understanding of that, and you need to be able to enforce these policies throughout the system. Deployment of models and rules. By the way, Lukáš talked about DORA, the Digital Operations Resilience Act, which says that you need to make sure that your systems are really secure. When you put a model into production, this is the point where it's most vulnerable because you could inject bad code into that. So having a right way to deal with that, a central understanding of how we do that as a company is very important as well. And of course, monitoring of the decision process. And I will show you an example in a minute. This example is very much about monitoring of the decision process. But to summarize what I just said, I think if you want to make AI trustworthy, and by the way, also scalable, you have to have two perspectives on that. So up to now, many companies, they have great lighthouse projects. They have done a lot of AI prototypes, but these are still prototypes. Putting them into production means to have two perspectives. First of all, as I said, every AI application is actually a collection of a lot of data sources, AI models, business rules. So an AI model just says, okay, here is the score for you. The score is 42. What does it mean? You have a business rule that says that how do I put this score into action? What is the concrete product? What is the concrete offer you would like to maybe implement also your tactics, your company tactics into those decisions? And that you do typically by using business rules. Then you maybe you use GenAI components to generate a text or an image for the, as I did in the beginning here. You have data pipelines, you have application logic. All that needs to be orchestrated somehow, put together in place. You need to manage the proliferation of all those tools you have in place and really build the application. And in the afternoon, I know you heard a lot of low-code, no-code initiatives. These apply to that as well, by the way. So orchestration, I would call this area operational AI. The other area, AI governance, is about what are the right controls I need to have in place? What are the right measures and responsibilities? How to make sure that this works? I work for Ab Initio. We are a software company. And as a software company, I can, of course, show you how that would look like in a software system that really monitors that. Just as an example. Take this just as some inspiration, okay? So this, by the way, is a high-level representation of the hyper-personalization application you just saw in the beginning of the talk, okay? And what we can read from here is, we see that this application here, the hyper-personalization one, that uses a lot of data sources, customer data, transaction data, product data, the real-time clickstream context, so to say. And we see all this is original data. We produced that data inside our company. And we also use socioeconomic data. We purchased that from an external source. By the way, this is a trusted source. I know that they comply to trustworthy AI as well. They checked for biases, right? But these are the data sources. And then this data is run through a chain of models. So the product affinity model here, which says that which are the products you would like to purchase maybe. Then we've got a next best action model. What is the best thing I could do? Should I send the offer? And what is the price? So there's a pricing model, so the model above here. And all this is put into a prompt and then put into a large language model, the GenAI component, which generates the text. So this is what this picture tells me. And it tells me even more. It tells me that, so I could zoom in each and every of these boxes here. The price sensitivity model, there is a data box. And it says that, okay, this model was trained on this specific data. So I document and link to the physical data that the model was trained with. And I also see the outcomes of the last scorings of the model. I can check whether Markus, whoever, really, what was the outcome of his scoring here? I could really check that. What are the detectors that are in place? So are there any measures which try to measure, is the model accurate? Can I detect a bias? So is there a systematic mismatch between the scores male or female people get? You can measure that. These measures are in place here. And of course, you have all the logs. And you see here also that there are detectors in place like bias, drift, effectivity of the model, and they give you the latest scores. So here are the detectors, and here are the scores. And I see that there is no bias in the model, but the data drifts away. So the patterns in the data, they change over time, and that can be an early indicator that the hyper-personalization application will fail in a few days, weeks, whatever, because the data is changing, the pattern, the behavior of people is changing. I see that right away, and I can act upon that. That could also be linked to the actual physical orchestration of data and rules. And this is just the representation of what's happening inside the application. You see that there are different data sources. You join the data, you compute some things, you call out for a machine learning model, and score some things, you run the pricing sensitivity. And here, by the way, we have another rule set that mitigates biases in the data. So we might have examined the data up front, and we see that the data contains some biases. We can care for that in a business rule. This is a way of coping with that. There are other ways of doing that, but you need to document what you're doing, and this is the way to do that. And maybe you see, if you look into the data, so we talked about data management, proper data management, we see here are some data sources, and the customer data uses birth date, gender. By the way, these are protected. You can't discriminate based on age and gender. So take care of what's happening inside. And by the way, if you look for the data quality of male and female data, so the yearly income data here, you see that there are different scores, like the completeness of data is different for those. That might introduce a bias, so you need to care for that as well. So this is a point where it just makes transparent what's happening inside your applications to keep, to guarantee that the business people who are responsible for that can sleep at night. Basically, that's the idea. So I think regulation is not just a burden. It's a huge chance for having a better customer experience, and also for having a good sleep at night because you value what AI really does in your company. So it must be part of the data strategy to talk about how you establish guardrails for trust. That's a must. You can't live without that. And I think it's a great way to not fall into the pitfall of really saying that, yeah, the data scientists will we'll talk about that. They will solve the problem. That's a company problem. That's a C-level, that's a board level problem you need to solve. And you have to have a holistic view and understand that, I mean, as a bank, you did data management and data quality for years, BCBS 239. Why shouldn't you utilize the experiences from that part and really extend that to AI as well? So that's perfectly working.